So, today I want to talk about something really, really serious that took place a couple of days ago. I know you've heard about it and it's kind of been all over the news, but I guess for me this is personal. Because a few days ago, the Islamic Republic of Iran shot 181 high explosive ballistic missiles at my city, at my country, at my family, at my people, and they were trying to kill as many people as possible. This is the second attack that they have actually perpetrated directly from Iranian soil. The previous one was in April when they launched ballistic missiles, drones, and cruise missiles, altogether 350. Uh, and in both attacks, what I'm glad to say, a protective dome kind of covered Israel. Some people will call it the Iron Dome. That's true, but I prefer to call it God's Dome. And today I'm going to talk about what happened. I'm going to talk about what didn't happen. I'm going to talk about what might happen. And I believe we should kind of talk about what's going to be Israel's response to these attacks. So let's jump in and see if I can kind of pull it all together. Here's what happened. Israel was actually dealing with Hezbollah in Lebanon when Iran decided that they have to retaliate for what Israel did to the Hezbollah in Lebanon. Now, let me remind everybody, we do not have a border with Iran. We do not have an element with Iran. We don't have anything that we're dealing with in Iran. So there's no actual political, strategic, military reason for all of this to happen. You might be wondering, what is a ballistic missile? Well, a ballistic missile is a missile that goes ballistic. It actually has a set trajectory to the target. It's launched almost straight up, and when it reaches the edge of the atmosphere, it turns over and starts coming down really, really fast, which is why it's hard to intercept. And lately, the Iranians have been putting fins on the side to make it even harder for us to intercept because it's kind of maneuvering on the way down. Because it goes so high, and because the footprint, the area where it can hit, is relatively great, those 181 missiles literally lit sirens, got the sirens going all over Israel. Um, I know I can talk about the defense systems and whatever, but my mom had to get out of her couch and run into our mamad. Mamad is our safety room or special room. It's a steel reinforced concrete room with iron dome, iron doors, and iron windows. And my sister had to get in, and the dogs all creeped out. And just like this, most of Israel stopped what they were doing and rushed into mamads wherever they could find them. Um, that is what's going on in Israel. And I know it sounds like people are taking it for granted, but it's not. And while that happens, Israel's defense systems kick into gear. Okay. The Arrow 2 is a high altitude defensive system that takes out targets way, way up on the stratosphere. DaviD Sling is a medium range system. And the Iron Dome, all of them work together to intercept the missiles. And when I mean intercept the missiles, they shoot missiles up into the air and they explode next to the incoming missiles. And now all of the shrapnel from all of that has to come together and hit the ground. So Israel was using its multi-tiered defensive system. The United States of America, I think, fired almost a dozen SM-3 missiles from two destroyers that were in the Mediterranean. There are kind of stories that maybe the French were part of this. We think the Jordanians actually took part in intercepting some of the missiles because definitely most of these missiles went over Jordan. And all of this came together in such a way to defend Israel, and everybody's taken credit for it. It looks like fireworks when it comes through, but it really is deadly fireworks. All of the missiles were either intercepted or landed in open fields. The only casualty, weirdly, was a Palestinian living in Jericho that was hit by debris from an interception actually over Jericho. And by the grace of God, that is the actual only casualty in all of this. Now, that's what happened. And here's the thing. It is very similar to the April attack. It's clear now to the whole world, and especially to us here in Israel, well, there in Israel, that we must retaliate forcibly this time. Iran needs to understand that these kinds of attacks are unacceptable. So that's the situation. That's where we are now. I want to go over a little bit about how did we get here, because I mean, in all of this dynamic, we kind of it's kind of running so fast that people forget what the lead up was to this. So I'm going to press the rewind button here a minute, and I'm going to go quickly over to the dynamics or the events that led up to this place. So let's rewind. A few days ago, 200 ballistic missiles from, by the way, either 1,200 miles away, depending on where in Israel and where in Iran. They claim it was a retaliation. Iran claims it was a retaliation for Israel's actions in southern Lebanon. And here's again, we have no issue with Iran. We have no issue with Lebanon. All of this is actually done in support or because they want to be a part of the war that the Palestinians are having with the occupation, the so-called occupation in Israel. They claim that it was a retaliation, and they aim to stop the missile attacks on the Hezbollah. The Hezbollah has been suffering terribly in Lebanon. So, besides what has happened to Hezbollah's on its back foot. And that is a problem for Iran, because Iran was using Hezbollah and in extension was using Hamas as their main tools, their main weapons in the battle against Israel. Israel actually targeted the Hezbollah commanders in a couple of very, very sophisticated airstrikes, and then targeted the Hezbollah mid-level fighters with the famous pager attack, where something like 3,000 pagers blew up in one moment and wounded a lot of the Hezbollah operatives. And this is crucial because the Hezbollah has fired over 8,000 rockets at northern Israel since October the 8th, the day after the deadly attack on the Gaza border. The Hezbollah says that the rocket fire is in solidarity with Hamas, following following the Hamas attack in Gaza, and that is the first element that instigated all of that. Because the Hamas, which is another terrorist organization that lives in the Gaza Strip, decided on the 7th of October to send more than 3,000 people over. They drove through the fence. They surprised us terribly. They murdered, killed, assassinated, whatever you want to call, more than 1,200 Israelis. They wounded over 7,000, and they kidnapped more than 250 hostages. They perpetrated this attack because they are fundamentally opposed to the existence of the state of Israel. The Hamas is a Muslim Brotherhood jihadi organization, and their rallying cry is very similar to what we're hearing in the United States: from the river to the sea. Now, from the river to the sea means the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. And you know, the extension of that is from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. In Arabic, it's a different chant. In Arabic, it's from the river to the sea, Palestine will be Arab. And that is the core issue that we're talking about. They attacked Israel from Gaza, hoping to draw other Muslim states into an all-out war against Israel. There's a lot of people who don't like the existence of Israel in the Middle East, and the Hamas thought that when they can show that they've attacked Israel, and they can show that they have stood up to Israel, but now they're being attacked by Israel, the Muslim Ummah, the Muslim world, will kind of connect to them and come to their support. They believe that this is a holy cause that they need to fight in a religious war against a jihad, basically, against Israel. It's based on their interpretation of the Quran. And they have this interpretation of the Quran. There are other Muslim states that have interpreted the Quran a little bit differently. For instance, Egypt and Jordan have reached peace agreements with Israel. Egypt shares a border, by the way, with Gaza, which is why we can't call Gaza a closed off prison, because Egypt has the gates, the key to the door. Uh, Other states like Saudi Arabia, some of the Gulf countries are moving towards agreements, either normalization and peace with Israel. And the Hamas was feeling betrayed by all of these different Arab nations. They saw no other option than to attack Israel, believing that if the rest of the Arab world would not fail in their duty, they would rise up to destroy Israel. The jihadi worldview holds that the Muslims should dominate the world. They believe that the world should be a Muslim world, and they see Israel as sitting in the middle of their waqf, their holy property or holy territory, or their holy land, which belongs, according to them, only to Islam. And they will kill and they will die in order to save it from the infidels. They believe this, and here's a point I need everybody to understand. They believe this because they don't accept what the Bible says about this land. The Bible that we read on a regular basis makes it very clear who this land belongs to. And this is something, in my mind at least, should be very clear to whoever takes the Bible seriously. When God made a promise to Abraham and to his descendants, he made a connection between the land, the people, and himself. That connection between God, the Holy Land or the Promised Land, and the chosen people, okay, is still in place. And it has been repeated numerously in different parts of the Bible. So at the base of this is a war between those who know that God gave them the right to this land and those who do not believe that God gave to this land to his chosen people. And you understand that this is the core issue that we've been dealing with ever since 1948, 1947, 1948, because this is what the war is about. It's not about territory, it's not about borders, even. It's about the Arabs accepting the fact that the Jews have a place in this land. And if you're watching this, and I know where you, if you're watching this, I know where you stand on this issue. And I know that you understand that we not only have a right to defend this land, but we also have an obligation to defend this land from those kinds of attack and this attempt to disassociate God's promise from the land. I mean, God promised it again and again. Genesis 12. This is where God first promises Abraham that he will make him a great nation and give the descendants, his descendants, the land. He specifically says, to your offspring, I will give this land. In Genesis 15, God reaffirms his covenant with Abraham. He specifies the boundaries of the land, which are completely different from the boundaries that we're talking about today. And he will give his descendants, Abraham's descendants, this land from the river Egypt to the river Euphrates, and which is includes part of Egypt and even part of Iraq and Syria. In Genesis 17, God repeats the promise to Abraham, making it an everlasting covenant and giving his descendants the whole land of Canaan. Paul repeats this in the New Testament, clearly saying, for the gifts and the callings of God are irrevocable. The Bible makes it clear who this land belongs to and who this land was promised to. And what I'm trying to stress here, that if this land was promised to the Jewish people by God, we cannot be colonizers. We cannot be somebody who came from outside. We don't need to reaffirm or prove that we have an legitimate holding on this land. So if you're a Bible believing Christian, you understand that. But even from a historical point of view, This is our ancestral homeland. This is as much our ancestral homeland as any other ancestral homeland has been down through history. So that is the core. They don't want a two-state solution. They don't want to live side by side. And as opposed to what the Western world is saying, Israel has agreed to a two-state solution already 5 times. We've agreed to compromise. We've agreed to give up a part of our inheritance in order to live in peace. The enemy, I don't know. I maybe this is what God wanted the whole time, but the enemy has never accepted any kind of compromise. Even though that the world is saying two-state solution, reach an agreement, find a way, okay? It's not that Israel hasn't tried, failed if you want to say. It's because the other side does not want a two-state solution. It wants Min Maya el Maya Palestina Arabia. From water to water, Palestine will be Arab. So that's the situation. That's where it comes from. Now, after these 200 rockets, we have to decide what's going to happen next. And that's going to be really, really critical. Um, Even though the world won't expect it or isn't really liking it, or world is afraid that this is going to make a BaLaGaN, Israel must retaliate. And there's an ongoing debate around the globe in boardrooms and political halls all over the world about how Israel should respond. Israel actually is having a debate inside, but though I think the plans have already been made. Should Israel retaliate directly against Iran by hurting Iran's nuclear program? Or should we hit the oil refineries? Or should we do something else? It's not no secret that Iran has been trying to develop a nuclear capability for years. And it's no secret that Israel is really, really worried about Iran being a nuclear power. And Israel has been looking for a reason, an option, or a way to take out Iran's nuclear program. I mean, listen to this. Iran says Israel should be wiped off the map and is putting together a nuclear program to make it happen. I mean, we don't need any more for this. But this could be the opportunity that Israel needs to kind of take out the Iranian nuclear program. Though we understand that the American administration, Biden made it very clear that they will not support such an action taken by Israel in this stage. So, in response to the April attack, and again, this is the connection between the United States and Israel, the United States put huge amounts of pressure to make a symbolic retaliation when Iran fired more than 350 drones and missiles. So Israel went and destroyed an air defense site that was guarding a nuclear facility. And the idea was to send a message that if we can destroy the defensive capabilities of the nuclear facility, we can destroy the nuclear facility. And that was the idea behind the strike. And that's what simmered it down. And Israel actually bowed to American pressure. But we believe that because Iran didn't pay any actual price for the last time they threw 300 rockets against us, that they have allowed themselves to do this again. But now things are different. Israel is planning on making a much more significant show of force. And the options are this: we're thinking about hitting military targets across Iran, maybe including the bases where these missiles were shot from. But I keep on hearing, even now, that we are being held to some ridiculous restriction. The world, I heard on BBC the other day, proportionality. Israel should not do anything that's not proportional. I mean, what does that mean? If Iran fired 200 rockets at Israel, should Israel be allowed to fire 200 rockets back? And if Iran missed the 200 rockets or they were intercepted, should Iran not be, or should Israel not be able to cause that much damage? The concept of punishment and the concept of deterrence, even from a biblical point of view, never talked about proportionality. Proportionality is in retribution. When you do something to somebody and you want retribution, but not in punishment. Evil always, according to the Bible, has to be destroyed. Otherwise, it festers and grows. And that's what we're seeing here. So the whole idea of proportionality is illogical. Second, as any law enforcement agency or person knows, it's not enough only to take the weapon away from the enemy. Because if you disarm your enemy, he will just find another way to make a weapon, buy a weapon, get a weapon, and he will be back at you somehow as soon as he can. You must somehow change his will, his need, his acceptance that he can attack you. And I believe that's what Israel has to do now. Otherwise, it's just a matter of time until this happens again. So the weapon we can destroy, and many here see this as a unique opportunity, but I think uh, we need to go into this a little bit kind of deeper on a different way. And in order to understand that, you have to understand a little bit about the Middle East and about the mindset of what we're talking about. By the way, side note, I can't understand this. Biden said to Israel, don't retaliate against Iran. And Israel is kind of not really knowing what to do with this. Biden also told Iran don't, and they did. Biden told Iran twice don't, and they did. So does that mean that we were told don't, and we are? Um, Iran's economy relies heavily on oil. I think something like 40% of their exports or oil of their national product is oil, and we know where their facilities are, and Iran's oil facilities are really concentrated and really vulnerable. Particularly the Isle, they have a facility, a depot on an island called the Hag Island, which is the jumping off point for something like 90% of Iran's exported oil. And there has been a retaliation actually aimed at that oil port. Iran, by the way, according to foreign press, has been moving its tankers away from the island, anticipating any kind of strike. The United States actually threatened to take over that oil and turn off Iran's export, and maybe that's what will happen. The problem is this. Iran is promising a retaliation for anything that Israel does. Now, we see that Israel can defend itself against these missile attacks, but the Gulf states, Saudi Arabia and the different Gulf states, aren't capable of defending their oil infrastructure or their oil assets as effectively as Israel can. And if Israel were to strike Iran's oil facilities, it could lead to massive strikes against facilities in different countries around the Gulf. And that could lead to disruptions in the global oil supply, dragging the U.S. and others into the conflict, changing the prices of oil. They are threatening to do that. And that's, I think, part of what has to be taken into consideration. So we'll have to wait what's going to happen. But I want to add my own two bits of wisdom here. And I want to say, I think something that I think is important. Israel has been building an axis of resistance, or what they call a ring of fire around Israel. And they've been doing it because they want to push the Western powers out of the Middle East. And they see Israel as one of those Western powers. And as long as Israel is in existence, Israel is going to be the focal point of Western, how do you say, Western influence in the Middle East. But this is gang warfare. This is like, inner city gangs on a global scale. And the ringleader is Iran. But until now, he's not really been attacking us directly. Until now, he's been sending his foot soldiers to do his work, and that was the situation. The thing is that Israel has taken out its foot soldiers. We've kind of put Hamas under siege. They're not going to be an element anymore. It looks like we're taking out the Hezbollah, and the Houthis in Yemen are not really effective. So they don't have any more foot soldiers, and they have decided to push against us directly. Anybody knows that in kind of this kind of situation, you can strike the foot soldiers, you can strike the people who come against you, but that's not enough. The leader has to be hit, And not only to hit, the leader has to be humiliated enough to show the other members of the gangs and the other members of other gangs that are watching, okay, that their leader is not worth following. And I think what Israel needs to do now is not just to hit an oil refinery or a facility or even a nuclear, it has to humiliate the Iranian Republican Guard. It has to humiliate the Iranian government. If it was me, I would take out any headquarters or building or asset that belongs to the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. That, I mean, the Revolutionary Guard Center in the middle of Tehran blowing up in some way, and there's a couple of ways to do it: air power, long range missiles. Israel, by the way, does have ballistic missiles. I'm not going to say what's on them, but we do have that capability. But even a high explosive missile blowing up in the middle of Tehran on the on the Revolutionary Guard's main facility will send a message to Iran and to the people of Iran that they're backing they are backing the wrong leader, and that might lead to a future change in the dynamics of what's going on in the Middle East. So that was a little bit of a long one today, but I thought it was important to bring it all together. I want to thank you for being us in here. If this kind of connection helped you understand better what's going on and help prepare you for what's going to happen, please like this, subscribe, please share it. Sharing is very, very important. Feel free to leave your comments below. I'm starting to read the comments more actively, and I will be replying. And if you have questions you want to ask, that's fine. If you want to support me and the work we're doing here at the BaLaGaN Connection, you can do that by the link that's down here on the site itself, or you can do that through the Gihon Springs ministry that we are a part of. There's a link for that down below. Gihon Springs is a ministry that it was created by Pastor Jeff Johnson, and we support soldiers in Israel, and we support ministries in Israel. So all of those are possible. Please write comments, because I'm trying to figure out what's going on. I'm trying to figure out what people want to hear and how this is impacting them. So this is the BaLaGaN Connection for today. The next couple of days are going to be very critical, because the question is what Israel is going to do and how Iran is going to react and how the United States is going to react. And just a reminder, we're moving very close to the American elections. Go to vote. No matter what, no matter who, go to vote. This is really important. So it's all coming together. Pray for us. Pray for our leaders. Pray for our soldiers. Pray for my mom and the family. And pray that Israel will come out of this on the other side. This is DaviD TaL. This is the BaLaGaN Connection. Hope to see you soon.